Hi everyone, my name is Aadi Weber, your host of the Paradigm Podcast. Today I'm talking to Sam Greenwood. Sam blends engineering roots with a deep commitment to personal growth and emotional resilience. After graduating from the University of Michigan with a degree in mechanical engineering, Sam shifted his focus towards supporting people, first through youth mentorship and community building, and now through the addition of soft skill coaching. He currently runs emotional resilience for product managers, helping product managers navigate stress, build confidence, and lead with clarity. With a unique mix of systems thinking and emotional insight, Sam empowers others to turn inner challenges into career breakthroughs. With that, please welcome our guest, Sam Greenwood.
Hi, Sam. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you and to speak with you, and we're finally able to do it. I know it's been some time in the running, but thank you so much for coming in and talking to me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
So, I guess we'll just get started with could you maybe walk me through a bit of your career and what you do and what you do now and sort of that trajectory, just to give everybody sort of an overview of who you are and what you stand for.
Yeah, for sure. So I started out, after I grew up and all that, then I was in university and studied engineering, mechanical engineering at Michigan. And I really got interested in that because I like math and science and I like building things too. And they came pretty easily to me. But then I also got kind of disinterested in engineering partway through because it was a bit too narrow, and I liked leadership a lot. I was really interested in working with people, and I also played ultimate frisbee very
Oh
competitively
wow.
at Michigan, and also before and after I was at Michigan. And so I was an athlete, and I was very interested in performance training and also the strategic side of sports and things like that. So I actually ended up towards the end of my engineering degree, I ended up going instead of finishing full time in 4 years, I went part time and I um, did some extra courses that were outside of engineering, and those helped me expand my scope of interest a bit more. So I did like a course on psychology and business management. That was through the business school at Michigan, and I learned about how to understand people's behaviors and culture at work and things like that, which was so fascinating. And I immediately applied it to my frisbee team. It was like the perfect use case. And
Awesome.
then I did like a creative course as well. I took a dance class. So crazy. I had no idea what
Wow.
I was doing. Um,
I I can imagine. I should probably take a dance class here, take advantage of it while I'm in college.
yeah. But I also watched this TED Talk that really influenced me, and it's called Hack School. So it was this 13-year-old, and he talks about how he's created this lifestyle experience with his parents that is his school. And
Hmm,
so he doesn't just do math and science and English and all that. He does basically more like projects. So he goes and works at a surf shop, or he, builds something with his dad, or learns a new skill, and then he um, brings in the subjects into that experience. And his message overall, but his name is Logan LaPlante. I think that's his name. But
okay.
his message was like you you can create your whole lifestyle around what you're passionate about and what you want to learn. And
Sure.
so that really motivated me. And so I started doing that while I was still in school, and it helped me become a self-learner. And I started taking some online courses, and I scheduled in my final semester, I scheduled 1 hour a day. That was my cooking class.
Oh wow.
And the reason I'm mentioning that is because after graduating, I decided that I didn't want to work as an engineer. I wanted to work in the food industry.
Hmm,
And specifically, the reason I wanted to work in the food industry was because I found that food systems was a very interesting and impactful way to engage with the topic of sustainability.
sure.
So, like there's kind of I think of like the tech world, and that's taking things in one direction. And then there's the sustainability movement. And while it works with tech, its focus is more about, environmental sustainability and energy efficiency and those types of things. And I was becoming more interested in that. And I decided like, yeah, I'm going to throw my chips in that basket. So I right out of college, then I worked with a startup that was building an app, and their focus was on promoting restaurants that serve like local and organic food.
Wow.
That was really interesting to me. And then I started working at a food business and a warehouse that was doing food distribution, and I learned how to cook there. So this was really sort of unexpected for me, like because I had spent most of my life thinking I was going to do math and science stuff, but then like my first real job, I was actually cooking food. And just did I just cut out there?
You did
Okay.
briefly, but I think,
So
yeah.
so I was actually cooking food, and it was so fun. And I was hesitant about doing that as a job because I had enjoyed it so much in my free time and while I was a student. So I didn't want to necessarily mix my passion with my profession,
Right.
because I thought that I might lose interest too quickly. But actually, it was the opposite. It actually made me more interested and more excited about going to work and more creative and
Mm.
uh, engaging more. And so it was a really good choice in the end. And
Wow.
yeah, so I did that job where I was in the warehouse, and I was actually cooking lunch for the staff that worked there. But ultimately, I had this bigger vision that I wanted to learn. I wanted to understand, how does the whole food system work? So how do the farmers grow the food, and then how does it get processed and distributed to the different places like the grocery store, the farmers market, the institutions, like the universities and hospitals and stuff that use the food, and then people's homes, and what's the culture behind it too. And I thought that one really powerful way to engage with my life and with the work that I was doing was engage on the level of culture. So it's like we can build new technologies, we can create great businesses, we can even be in the government, and we can decide laws and things. But what about this layer of culture, and how do we engage with that layer of society, and how do we have an impact on it? And hopefully, a good impact. Uh,
Right.
but yeah, that was like a big question for me. And so
Mm.
I did that for a while, and then I I think mostly because I'm like a high achiever, I burned out.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that. We kind
I'm
of
sure.
are want to perform and do good and get good grades and get a good job and make a lot of money and make our parents happy and all that. And so I was doing most of those things. And um, somewhat through the work, but actually mostly through the ultimate frisbee experience that I had. So I really wanted to be like the best, and I wanted to win, and I wanted to have a great team, and
Right.
all of that. And so on the one hand, I did actually I had the opportunity to play on the U.S. National team for under
Oh, wow.
23,
Wow.
and I played on the mixed team, so we had men and women on the team,
Right.
and we competed in London, and we won the gold medal. So
Wow.
that was like
That's
amazing,
pretty cool. Yeah.
Um, and I
Wow.
got to achieve and just be like literally the best.
Yeah.
And then it still wasn't really enough, and
Mm.
so I just kept pushing myself, and um 3 more years after that, I officially burned out.
Yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
was when I decided to do some traveling and take a break. I had saved up a bit of money, and I wanted to go live abroad and spend some time outside of the US and experience different cultures. And so I went to actually did a trip to Thailand. And well, I'll just say just quick shout out that I did a cross country road trip from the East Coast to the West Coast, and I finished in LA and I flew out of LA.
Okay.
So I flew out of
Wow.
LA and flew to Thailand. And then I did a bit of traveling and I worked on a farm there. And one thing that really shifted a lot for me while I was there was I did a meditation retreat. So I had been learning about meditation before I was going to Thailand, and I actually met a teacher in San Francisco, and I asked them, like, hey, I'm going to Thailand. What should I do? I want to learn more about meditation and Buddhism and all that. Like, it seems interesting to me. And he's like,
Right.
oh, go to this monastery. They do a 10-day silent meditation retreat once a month, and it'll be great for you. And I had like no idea what I was getting into, but I just went for it. And so yeah, I did
As one
that
would.
in 10 days in silent meditation practice, and they had like teachers and guidance, and I did talk a little bit, but mostly just learned how to actually relax and not be achieving all the time. Although my mental patterns of achievement did show up. I was trying to figure out how to win.
Oh, wow.
How do you win uh, a silent meditation retreat?
I don't know. Did you? Did you figure it out?
No,
Well, there you go. It's probably not meant to be
not at all.
competition.
But this really launched me into a new direction where I realized that there was like a whole layer of learning that I could explore, which was about the inside of me, mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Sure.
And so I started to get really curious about that, mostly because it felt really good. Like
Yeah.
when I started to be more relaxed internally, less agitated, and more present with myself, it felt really good. It feels really, really good. And I just thought, wow, this is so much better than everything else I've been feeling. And yeah, so then I just kept going with that. And this was like just really before like a year or so before COVID that I got into all this. And then COVID was happening, and it was like, well, everyone just had to slow down and, stay at home and just try to figure out how to be okay. And for me, it was the great because I was like, well, I could just meditate more.
Yeah, especially when we were all locked inside.
Yeah. So I did some more retreats and I did some online programs, and I kept exploring these topics. And Buddhism is interesting because it doesn't really make sense in the Western context. So like
Right.
being living in and growing up in the US, it wasn't like, oh, like Buddhism fits into how we all think here. It doesn't really fit in. And so I had to take some time to look at what was I getting out of those experiences and that sort of worldview that Buddhism has, and where does it fit in? And what I found was like this, not sustainability exactly, but there's like I call it like post-sustainability movement,
Okay.
which is like, okay, yeah, sustainability is like also not gonna really work that well, because we're just counting numbers and things are more complex than that. And it's not just that we need more trees, but we need like healthy ecosystems. And so it has this, this post-sustainability has a view that is um, more like, how do we actually heal? How do we heal things and regenerate and rejuvenate ecosystems and communities and our, the mental structures the culture that we live in, essentially. So there's this movement that's called like regenerative design or regeneration or it's usually like around that.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of other terms as well, like decolonialism is one that often goes along or in parallel, maybe you could say, with regeneration. so I started like exploring those more, and really what I came to the conclusion I came to from all of that was, okay, I need to get really involved in my local community.
Yeah.
Like this isn't about like creating some thing that's like gonna help everyone in the world. Like I need to be involved where I am, and I need to be creating a healthy space in my community for the people that I'm living near to, the land that we're living on, the lakes. I live around a bunch of lakes and mountains, and like we want the water to be healthy so that we can keep drinking it and using it for agriculture. And it it really like there's like this saying like, think globally, act locally.
Right.
And that was it. I was like, oh, okay, like that's what I need to do. So
What
I
did
jumped
you do?
back in. This is actually when I moved back to Canada, where I'm from originally, and I just got involved in my local community, and I started hosting meditation things. I worked at a local restaurant and helped them shift their food sourcing to work with some of the local farms.
No.
And then after that, I worked as what's called an outreach worker. So kind of like a social worker, but um, without the intervention skills, more just like connecting with people, understanding their challenges, especially around mental health and social services, and then directing them to get support. So that was really interesting. And I was like working with I was hosting activities at the community center as well.
No.
And then since I left that job, then I started building a coaching business. And for me, this is like combining all the different things that I've been learning from leadership and meditation, and the course that I took at university around business and psychology, and all these things, combining them all together. And so to see how I can support individuals and especially leaders with their the way that they're showing up and their really like their mental and emotional patterns. So rather than like when I was uh burning out, it's because I was stuck in this high achiever mode. And um it took that introspection process to sort of like unlearn those ways that I was being, and then try new things. So yeah, that's what I focus on now. And I have specifically been working with product managers who mostly work in tech companies, and that's how we met.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Shout out to Lenny's newsletter in the Slack channel.
Yes, yes, yeah. Big fan of Lenny Rachitsky's work and his podcast, and yeah,
Great community. Great community.
yeah.
Well, awesome. Thanks for the overview. You've definitely seemed like you've explored many different parts of yourself and kind of really figured out what it is that motivates you, drives you, pushes you, um, without, sacrificing sort of your mental health and your well-being. Because I know a lot of us feel that pressure of I need to perform, I need to achieve, I need to succeed. In the you recently were interviewed by the One Night Interview podcast, and I
Mhm.
know you talked a lot about um, sort of that that feeling of we need to constantly achieve, especially for product managers. We need to get from point A to point B, and in that sense, it's seen as a very linear sort of movement, when in fact you kind of talked about different life cycles, even on Earth, and how in the seasons it's not always just a straight shot from one spot to another. It can oscillate, it can go up, it can go down, it's a cycle, it's circular. So it's refreshing, I guess, to hear that that's something that you've explored and kind of become in touch and in tune with. And so, yeah, I guess I'm more curious to hear after watching the episode. It was a great episode, by the way. Um, you talked a lot about the fact that you think your hot take
Mhm.
is that we as a society are on the cusp of a collapse.
Yeah.
And you talked about product managers, how they kind of like take their eye off the ball, the metaphorical ball.
Mhm.
What did you kind of mean by that? And can you kind of elaborate on this hot take? Because I think it's really interesting. I think it ties into a lot of what, I want to talk about with you and kind of, where you've sort of ended up and how you got there. And I think it really will tie everything together. So,
Yeah. 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 So the first part would be the collapse. And when I say collapse, that can sound quite alarming, which is partly why I use it. But also
right,
there could be other words. So fragmentation could be a word that might be sound a little less extreme. But for instance, societal fragmentation or global systems fragmentation, we could, I mean, certain events might lead to that, like COVID or like a recession or like political disruption, so or
sure,
climate change. So there's different variables that are all happening that could trigger something like that that would cause a more significant break in the sort of global centralized system that we seem to be living in.
right,
And there's a very good term if anyone is interested in like researching on this more. The term is the meta crisis.
hmm.
And is that something that you've heard of? Is that a term that you've heard?
I've heard of it. I can't say I've done a whole lot of research on it, but
So the idea is really simple. It's just that the different crises that we see, like climate change and COVID and political extremism and things like that, they're actually all related. There's essentially like one root of what is causing all of those crises to happen. And that's sort
right,
of my point too, which is that historically, societies, empires, especially, come to an end.
right,
And so they start and they grow and they build, they establish themselves and they mature and then they start to get old and brittle and they expand, they go beyond their resource limits and then they essentially debase themselves and then they start to collapse and they fragment and all the innovations and the people and the cultural ideas and everything that can still exist, like the subcomponents, but it's not all coherent as like one idea anymore. So an idea that we have is America. It's an idea, right?
right,
And like you look on a satellite image of the Earth, and there's no lines that show where America starts and ends. It's just that idea that we learned from, first grade or whatever.
right,
Like, oh yeah, this is a country and it's so solid. But even the idea of like a nation state is an
sure,
idea. They didn't used to have nation states.
right.
And so at some point in the future, we also won't have nation states, or we may have like a vestigial version of that.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I notice I'm maybe going, I don't know if I'm still on track, but I just want to come back. There was a second part of your question. Did I speak to that yet? Or
Yeah, well, I guess I mean all of this is relevant. But I guess no, the second component was how do you kind of see product managers
right.
in terms of, taking their eye off the ball and
Yes.
how does that sort of manifest with all of the stuff that you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. And so what my experience was what studying engineering and being in that tech world was that it had a myopic view of what was really going on in the world. And so it sort of like the message that I was taught through my engineering program was just build more technology, just build better technology, and build great companies around it. And that's the best thing that we can do. That's the best way to contribute to society. That's the best
Right.
thing that someone can do with their life. And so, and we uh, put certain people on pedestals who are doing that right now, like Mark
Right.
Zuckerberg, even like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and now Elon Musk. And it's all this like technological, uh, like technology is solving everything and it's the greatest.
Right.
And AI is like, just like the next like iteration of the next like big innovation in the tech space. And I'm not saying that these are bad. I'm just saying that if we only focus on that as what is good and worthwhile, then we miss like everything else that's going on.
Right.
And so, anyways, a lot of the tech people that I talk to, which are mostly product managers, they're like many of us, they're in this view that, okay, I just need to get a job, and I just need to make some money, and I just need to do something that I'm good at. And I also like, I don't want to be doing something bad. I don't want to be doing bad things or malicious things in the world. But essentially, I need to like fit into this system, and I need to squeeze myself in order to produce something so that I can then survive.
Right. Yeah, I
And so
totally
it's actually like a fear-based view of your life.
living in fear.
So I need to do all these things in order to survive.
So
And
do you
then
kind of help people take
there's
a
a
step back
yeah,
then? That's sort of your approach.
I'll just add one thing, which is that there's like a slightly more grounded version of that, but it's still kind of messed up, which is I just need to squeeze myself a bit more so that I can save up enough money so that I can then be okay in the future.
Right. Obviously
Which is
that
essentially also a fear-based view because it's saying I'm not okay right now.
right. It's still the point A to point B mindset.
And that I'm not okay right now, therefore I need to do something so that I can be okay in the future. That comes from like an emotional instability, like anxiety or fear or uh, something like, something like that that's internally disturbing us.
So with the people that you work with, your clients, does this, I mean, you're talking a lot about fear and uncertainty and doom. How does this kind of come up for them? I guess specifically like when they're working. And I know you said, oh, I need to save up, I need to do X, Y, and Z, but how does that sort of affect their work, their output? And then I guess what is the larger effect on society as a whole if everybody is in this fear-based mode and they're
Mhm.
just looking to get from one thing to the next and to just keep going instead of zooming out, seeing sort of the bigger picture and understanding how is what I'm doing with all of these other amazing people collectively, how is that going to benefit society? And instead of, looking at it from like a we're all in this together, a collective perspective, let's bring a net positive to the world. They're looking at it from a very individualized sort of manner, and they're just looking at how do I succeed for myself, for my family, and then just kind of running with that. So I guess how do you help people sort of step back and understand that, and how does that all sort of
Yeah.
come up for folks?
Yeah, and what's tricky here too, I want to like create some clarity because the kind of coaching that I offer and the way I approach it is not necessarily about these bigger systemic issues.
Okay.
Like
Sure.
it may be, but it's not sort of directly. I'm not like, oh, I'm going to help you product manager with the fear that you have around like your salary
Right.
or like your eco anxiety or something, it's not like it's more just like I can I understand that I can help people on that level, like their mental and emotional patterns, which are impacting how they show up in their work and the effectiveness of the way that they work. And on the bigger picture, that may have some overall societal benefit of creating a bunch of people, like helping those people become more emotionally grounded and less in their reactivity and fear and all that. So, um, so that then overall in the course of their entire life, they make decisions that are more and more supportive of positive impact in the world.
Okay, that makes sense. So
Yeah.
can we try something really quickly? Do you
Yeah.
mind? Okay. Can we pretend that I am your client for a second? Me, Adi Weber. I'm a second year student at USC. I'm in the business school.
Yeah.
Um, Not working yet, but obviously high pressure, high stress. Uh, Everybody here is very motivated, very competitive. We're all looking to land the next internship or, get that return offer or whatever it may be. And let's say, I'm actually going to be interning this summer as a growth
Nice.
PM. So this
Oh,
is
wow.
actually
That's
quite
so cool.
relevant for me. But okay, let's just say I come to you, Sam.
Yeah.
Um, I am really stressed out. I want to really excel in my role as a PM. I really care about the world, benefiting the world. I don't want to do anything that would cause more detriment. There's already enough chaos going on. But I'm also really anxious because I want to succeed. I'm anxious by nature. I am a high achiever. I've always been pushed to just do better, to do better and better and better, whether it's getting a 4.4 in high school or, getting into USC's business school or, getting the internship. I'm kind of flailing around here because I know that I'm going to burn out at some point, and I do easily burn out, whether it's, after a test or whatever it may be. So I kind of need some guidance here, and I want to improve my emotional resilience, which I know is something you're quite
Mhm.
well versed in. So what would you kind of recommend to me? What's some steps that you would
Mhm.
take, and if you were to coach me, and I
Mhm.
just would like some sort of guidance here, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Wow. On the spot. Here we go.
On the spot. You told me you like getting right to the heart of it, so
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
here we are.
So so the approach that I'll just briefly describe the approach that I typically take is I want to help you understand I want to help you understand your own patterns so that you can see where they're not so that you can control them or fix them necessarily, but so that you can understand and see what is happening.
Right,
And there's like this layer of the mental and emotional experience that's going on inside of you,
right,
which we're not really taught how to observe.
sure,
It's more just external and output and, like, follow the rules and all that kind of stuff. That's like what we learn in
right,
school, and most parents are teaching us how to do that side of
totally,
things.
totally.
But so starting to track the internal experience. So it could be the thoughts that come up, it could be the feelings that you feel, it could be like sensations in your body. And then like we can even do this right now if you want to. We can think
Okay,
about a particular pattern that seems to be most well, maybe not the most challenging one, but one that is frequent or um maybe somewhat challenging for you that seems to come up. And then we
okay.
can just like let's first identify it on the external layer. So what's the situation that comes to mind when I mention that?
You mean like a pattern that I've noticed within myself? Like,
Yeah,
okay,
like I get stressed out when, or I
I
get
get
anxious when.
okay, I get stressed out when I have multiple obligations
Mhm.
and multiple deadlines, and I know that I need to get everything done to, I would
Okay,
say, I
great.
try to,
So
am I going too far?
when did that happen recently?
Um, I had to, so I had a couple of exams last week, and they were all like within the same like week. It was like it was just back to back days of I needed
Is
to
there a
study.
particular day or time that was most stressful in all of that?
I would say I get the Sunday scaries. where
Okay.
it's like,
Yeah.
it just feels like everything's great on Saturday, and then Sunday it's like, well, here comes doom.
Okay. So you had like, so think about that time on Sunday where you had the Sunday scaries.
Yeah.
So just like visualize that moment, like you were at maybe at your house or at the library, or I don't know, whatever you
Yes.
were doing.
Right.
And you're just like, oh my gosh, Sunday. Oh my gosh, like
Yes.
week is gonna suck.
And I waste a lot of time, I guess, doing that, and just kind of a sense of, I guess, self-pity almost, where it's like, oh my goodness, like I'm so overwhelmed, I don't know what to do. Even though I do prepare myself pretty well in advance, and it's not like I waited until Sunday to start studying or whatever. It's just
Mhm.
there's that overwhelming sense of fear and anxiety, I guess, sometimes that comes up for me, where it's
Yeah.
like, I can't fail. I need to achieve perfection. I'm very much a perfectionist. And so that anxiety sort of kind of onsets, especially
Yeah.
on Sunday,
Yeah.
especially before
I
a big
totally
week.
get it.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, but
Yeah.
it's
So
definitely, yeah, when you're in a library and you see everybody and their heads are down and you're like, oh gosh, like it's game time.
yeah.
So that's when I would say I feel it the most.
Okay. So go to that memory, that recent memory, and just like as you're talking about it, you're probably even there a little bit. And just
Yeah,
tell me what is there an emotion or feeling that comes up in your body?
it's almost like a sense of dread. Like, I guess, like
Okay.
I can kind of feel it in my stomach a little bit, where it's like
Great. So
sometimes I
that
can,
was my second question is where do you feel it? So we can
right,
say dread and then you say in my stomach.
right. And yeah, in my stomach. So it's either it's really interesting. If I'm like kind of stressed out, I'll tend to like snack a little bit too much. But if I'm like really stressed out, like my body shuts down, doesn't want to eat anything. So sometimes if I'm really stressed out, I really feel it in my stomach because it's confused, and it's not getting the fuel that it needs to, you know, fuel my brain and allow me to do everything that I need to do. So
Yeah.
it's kind of, ironic in that way, where it's like I know I need to do something, but because I'm stressing out about it so much, I can't actually get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we have these embodied experiences, their emotions or triggers or feelings, sensations, whatever, it could be part of our digestive system. It could be, you know, an emotional experience. We don't really learn how to track them,
Right.
and we just either learn that they're neutral and they're just like it doesn't really mean anything, or we assign some significance to them, like, oh, that's bad, or that's good, or that's painful, or when that shows up, I do this.
Yeah.
And then we have like an intellectual relationship with those experiences, which is basically subconscious. Not to say that the intellect is the subconscious, but we have a subconscious pattern that plays out when those feelings come up, and then we just can intellectually observe or talk about that sort of stuff.
Right.
But in order to actually do something different, we would need to connect with it in a non-intellectual way, which would be sort of through more of a right brain approach, which is, or there's a term somatic, which means like feeling in your body. So that's one way also of just connecting somatically with the pattern. So that's what we're doing right now. So this is like great. Like yoga often helps with this, therapy, meditation, certain types of coaching, also even the right kind of journaling can help with that. Um, so let's go a little bit further and just see. I'll just ask you a few more questions about
Yeah,
the.
I
Is
put you on the spot. Now you put me on the spot.
that okay?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, awesome. So as you're talking about this feeling in your stomach, this dread,
Sure.
do you notice it at all? Like maybe a low volume, but do you notice the feeling a little bit?
Yeah, I can feel a change in my body. I mean, I know I said I'm a perfectionist and I have some anxiety that I have to deal with when I manage deadlines and stuff. I always get it done, but I usually am pretty calm, I would say, overall. Like,
Mhm.
I don't go about my week just feeling like a sense of dread or, have a pit in my stomach. But
Yeah.
sometimes when Sunday shows up and I know I have 2, 3, 4, 5 things to do, and I want to do them as perfectly as I can, I totally feel a change in my body. Like I go from being kind of more
Oh,
happy go.
I maybe asked the wrong question. I'm actually curious if you're noticing it right now at all.
Oh,
As
right now.
yeah,
Oh, just by even talking about it.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah, I like kind of put myself, I visualized it and I gotta put myself in that scenario. So yeah, I totally feel it right now.
Okay. And what volume would you say it's at, like out of 100?
Probably 50.
Okay, 50.
Probably brought me up to halfway.
Yeah. Is that okay, or does it feel like not okay?
It feels okay. I think sometimes a little bit of anxiety kind of can motivate you. So thinking about this right now, I'm actually getting motivated to start my work probably later today.
Nice. Nice.
But no, but there's definitely like a certain threshold where it becomes not okay, where it's like
Yeah.
it's not productive. It becomes counterproductive because now
Right.
I'm trying to center myself, and that takes more time than immediately just getting done the task at hand. So I have to spend more time just focusing.
Yeah. So your nervous system has all these signals happening, like this one you're describing.
Sure.
And when they get too intense, then they take over, and they actually, like, a lot of our brain will shut down, and we'll stop being able to
Totally.
access like our higher cognitive functions. So we just go into more of a like a reptile brain or reactive mode. And like that you've
Yeah.
talked about it a little bit already here.
Yeah.
But when we can sort of stimulate or tickle those sensations, but at a lower volume, then we can sort of keep our whole brain and our body more open and be curious about that experience rather than reactive to it.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so I don't know if I think 50 is borderline. My experience, it usually works best when things are down to like 20 or 30% volume as a way to start to explore it. So it may not be something that we'll do right now, but yeah, it's like typically the next question that I would ask someone is just like describe, well, this isn't a question technically, but just describe what you're feeling. Like, how big is it? Does it have like a texture
Hmm.
or a shape, or yeah, those kinds of things.
So it sounds like you're just trying to get people to be more in touch with themselves, and then through that work and really having a higher level of, awareness
Mhm.
that inherently will seep into the work-life balance that will kind of start to improve on its own instead of trying to, I guess what I'm understanding is instead of just sitting down and trying to figure it out and solve it like it's a math problem. Like, how do I get less stressed and become like really good at what I do and make a lot of money or whatever? It's not like a math problem. It's like being really in tune and in touch with yourself. And then from there, everything else will kind of reap the benefits from that. And
Yeah,
you'll just start to see an improvement in your life instead of trying to
yeah,
figure it all out from, such logistic, a logistical perspective. Does that kind of
right.
make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not to say that the logistics aren't important. It's just let's build the logistics from a place of internal safety and clarity and non-reactivity rather than from a place of anxiety, reactivity, stress, and all of that.
Right.
Because, well, who do you think in the long run is going to, I'll say, make more money, but what I really mean is have more impact and have a better life? Is it the person that's stressed out and that's reacting and that, works really hard and then burns out and has to recover from that? Or is it the person that comes from a place of being grounded and clear and present with their own experience?
Right.
And by the way, like, I don't actually necessarily know the answer to that question that I just posed.
Hmm.
It might seem obvious to you, and it might seem obvious to anyone listening. That's fine. But what I really mean by that is try it out. and see what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Right. Everything is different for each individual person.
Yeah. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm judging them either, because I know that like these kinds of patterns are not necessarily easy to just like stop doing. It's like,
Sure. Sure.
oh, I'll just be in touch with my feelings and not logical all the like not like logistical all the time. It's
Right.
like,
Right. It's different for
and
everybody.
then that becomes like another logistical thing that I need to do.
That's a perfect example of why your approach should be tailored to a specific person rather than
Yeah.
broadly applying it to society as a whole,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would say. So then I guess kind of like slightly pivoting, but we're talking about like emotional resilience and building that up. Do you think from your perspective that emotional resilience is a luxury, or is it maybe more now a requirement for anybody who is trying to build things that don't harm people or society at whole?
Mm. Oh, wow. That's a great question. Um, I actually, before I answer that, I just want to go back to one other comment, which
Sure.
about the use case of emotional resilience.
Okay.
So oftentimes the way I think about it is that like I'm trying to execute some strategic thing in my life. Like I'm trying to like ace my exam, but I'm really stressed out and it's costing me like I do study hard and I do well in the exam, but then I'm exhausted and it takes me like 3 days after to recover.
Right.
It's like a huge cost. And so the use case for the emotional resilience is, can I understand the emotional patterns that I have that are creating all that stress and then the burnout afterwards? So I understand them so then I can start to experiment with like doing things slightly differently.
Right.
Can track my own pattern and experiment and try different behaviors and mental like beliefs and stuff like that. And
Totally.
eventually then I find a more efficient way to be successful. And then when I finish the exam, I'm still energized and and
Right.
I have 3 more days in my life.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally harnessing that power and that feeling of, autonomy, I guess. Kind of reclaiming some of your life back, it
Yeah.
sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So then back to your question, and I just want to try to recap it before I dive into it. So yeah, actually maybe if you still have it top of mind, you could ask it again.
sure. Yeah, I guess the question is like for emotional resilience, do you think
Yeah.
that it's a luxury for folks? Do you think that it's or like do you think it's either a luxury or is it more of a requirement now for people who are trying to build things that won't negatively impact society? So I guess a lot of that would be PMs.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that it's a necessity or is it a luxury? Like it kind of uh delineating that.
Yeah. Um, there's something I didn't mention earlier, which I think is really relevant now, and it's sort of a setup for my final answer here. But there was something I noticed happening when I was in the tech space and in engineering, and it's that we isolated a problem and then built a solution for it, but we didn't study the secondary effects that that solution would be creating.
Right.
So it's
Sure.
like, oh, isolated that one problem and we solved it with this solution, but we're not looking at the whole picture and understanding how that solution, while it solves that problem, it's also creating other problems.
Right. Right. Right.
The plastic is like such a great example of this,
Yeah. My dad
right?
was actually
So
just telling me the other day, he's like, "Do you know how many people are exposed to microplastics? They say that if you like look at the average person, they have like looking at it in a cumulative way about like the size of a plastic fork in their brain in their blood system. It's just yeah. So
wow.
you might have solved the problem of how do we give people fountain drinks at a fast food chain and not have to get it back from them and wash or whatever. But
Yeah,
now we're polluting the environment and we're, causing people to, we don't even know the effects of some of these risks posed. So yeah, I
right.
totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's this pattern where sort of myopic thinking and problem solving leads to secondary effects which aren't being studied or tracked, and then they just get externalized. So that term externalizing costs, that's like something I'm sure you're aware of,
Right.
learning about in business school. And
Yeah.
it's actually seen as like a sort of a good idea, like in a business case, because it's like, oh, we'll just like externalize those costs, then we don't have to deal with them.
Right.
So then we can, generate more revenue and have a more successful business. But
Sure.
then those externalized costs they can become problems that like destroy things, and that are
Right.
sort of unethical in a way.
And I would say even more than that, obviously prioritizing the well-being of the climate and, people in general, society at large. There's also like down the road financial implications for businesses that sort of
Right,
disregard that. I
right,
guess like an example is, with the cap and trade system, like, there are limitations. We've come to a point where pollution, global warming is just so atrocious. It's really just kind of making things not look so great for the future. I'll just put it simply. But yeah, like there are going to be more sort of consequences of the decisions that we make now if we look in such a short-term manner. And I guess taking a step back, zooming out and understanding that each decision kind of causes a chain reaction and sort of affects people down the line, and understanding that, really knowing that the decisions that you make as a business, as a PM, as whatever role that you may play in a business, like that should really be taken into consideration in terms of how are we going to impact not just, customers, but every stakeholder, people, employees. How is that going to impact the environment? How is that going to impact, our country, our society at large, our relations with one another? How is that going to affect all of that later on down the line? I think that's really important. That's something that I know I've tried to prioritize and think about as I start to enter the workforce and whatnot.
yeah.
So
Yeah, so like thinking about the second and third order effects of those decisions, that's
sure.
so important.
Right.
And 100 years ago, like we didn't necessarily have to, because the oceans were so much healthier. For example, like the oceans were so much healthier and not full of plastic. And so what's the problem of just a little bit of plastic ending up in the ocean? Well, nothing, but not really. But then when that accumulates over decades and a whole century, then it becomes a problem, because that whole the body of water, is fundamentally changing, and it's becoming saturated with a foreign object that it doesn't know how to digest and process and make use of, actually. And so um, it's just very interesting then to tie this back into the emotional resilience thing. I don't know if emotional resilience is the right term in this case, but it's more the awareness aspect of it, which is kind of like a precursor to resilience. It's like,
Right.
just being aware of what's going on, whether it's emotionally inside of yourself, or if it's, globally, or societally, or, in your local environment, what's happening. And um, so there's kind of this shift from um, how can I solve an isolated problem with a solution and not be aware of the external effects? And this is actually my issue with the sustainability movement,
Hmm.
is that like electric cars and solar panels and um, I don't know, throw something else in there, but it's these kinds of solutions which are still not necessarily studying the holistic impact of creating that thing.
Right.
And so while like I think that the sustainability movement is going in the right direction, I think we actually still need to go a step further, and we need to be looking at how can we identify problems and then build solutions, but study the holistic impact of those solutions and design the solution so that design the solution so the secondary and tertiary impacts are positive.
Right.
And so what the crazy thing is that nature has been doing this for millions of years already.
Yeah.
Because everything that's organic, like everything that is made of life, it gets reused by some other form of life,
Yes.
right? So a tree grows and it uses soil and it uses sunlight and it uses all these things, it uses water, but then when it dies, it becomes a house for bugs, for birds while it's still alive, and mammals. Then it decomposes and it becomes food for mushrooms, and then it turns back into soil, and it becomes now the foundation for other things to grow out of,
Yes.
right?
Totally.
So
Yeah.
it's
It
like,
all harks back to that one lesson I learned in science class, probably, I don't know, fifth grade or something. Matter cannot be created nor destroyed. And so it's just
right,
everything's reused, recycled, regenerated in different forms, but it's still the same stuff that we have here on Earth and beyond. So
yeah, yeah.
so
So
totally.
yeah, and so for instance, plastic again is um it's quote bad because it doesn't fit into those natural cycles of life, and but it's not necessarily bad if if as a planet we evolve to learn how to integrate it into those cycles that we have. But
Sure.
I will just say that for sure it's going to disrupt a lot of things. And we're going
Most
to have to
certainly.
reorganize around it. And I mean, plastic is here to stay. I
Right.
sort of hate to say it, but it's here to stay because it's everywhere.
Right.
And
It's
there's
not
no
just
way to
that.
just retrieve all of that. So what's going to happen and what is already happening is that certain things will learn how to use plastic as a resource. And that could look like recycling, where we turn it, into other commercial products and whatnot. But it could also be organisms that actually eat the plastic, and because plastic is carbon based, so it actually has energy in it.
Mm.
So there's organisms that can eat it and extract the energy out of it and then use that to as their food.
So it just sounds to me like a lot of adapting, pivoting,
Yeah. Yeah.
just because I guess things don't stay the same and things change over time and we evolve and obviously a lot of things just are constantly adapting and changing. And
Right.
so
Right.
yeah, I guess it's just kind of understanding what to do from here and instead of just kind of throwing our hands up and saying, well, I don't really know. Everything's so different. I don't really know how to go about it. It's so different than how it was 20, 30, whatever, 40, 50 years ago. It's more
Yeah.
about, okay, we're these things, these factors are here to stay. The changes are here. Like you said, plastic is an example of that. But we're also here to stay. So we need
Mhm.
to ensure that in order to continue um, existing, thriving, developing, um, we need to kind of be in tune with that. So,
Yeah.
uh,
And that's exactly where the emotional resilience also comes in, because whether it's for product managers or really anyone, it's just can I get, how can I be more adaptable? How can I be more aware of what's going on, both around me, but also inside of me? How can I address the stress, address the emotional turmoil, anxiety, numbness, etc. I didn't mention numbness yet, but that's like a huge one, is that we're numbing ourselves.
Yeah.
We're shutting down and suppressing things because it's so intense.
Right.
But what are we missing out on when we're doing that? What are all the different streams of information and things happening in the world that we're disconnecting from?
Sure.
So if we can learn to be with those emotional experiences um, and not get reactive, not be reactive to them, then we can address things more directly. And that's going to help us both be more strategic on an individual level, but it's also going to help us collaborate better, which comes
Totally.
back to the whole leadership. And, like if you want to be effective in a work environment, it's a lot about collaboration.
Totally.
Yeah.
I guess kind of switching gears for a second, just because all this is, we could probably talk about this for an indefinite amount of time. There's so much to
Hmm.
cover. But I guess because, with Shift, we focus a lot on tech ethics. I guess now it's more so relevant to say AI ethics in society, in the workforce, so on and so forth. And I guess you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's under, my impression that you've talked about kind of AI proofing a career and that sort of thing,
Okay.
um,
Yeah. Yep.
or something adjacent to that.
Yep.
So I guess, what do you think we can do to AI proof our work ethically, I guess, for PMs or for whomever, to not just basically not just to stay employed or, to get your next paycheck or whatnot, but to do so in a manner that allows us to stay human and centered and, basically harking back to the whole emotional resilience thing.
Yeah. 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 Well, so there's sort of a bit two parts, but I think I'll focus more on the how do we stay in uh, the ethical approach with building technologies like this, and then there's like
Totally.
the secondary
Okay.
part of what you're saying
Sounds
too,
good.
which is like how do we ensure our relevance in our careers, with especially with technology like AI that is replacing, not necessarily replacing jobs, but replacing certain functions, and then making teams more efficient in certain ways, which then that replaces jobs.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
So, yeah, let's see. Well, I guess what I've been seeing and hearing. So, like I use AI. I mean, when I say that, I specifically mean LLMs, large language models like ChatGPT, for instance, and um, I've been exploring like how do they work and where do they break and what are the good use cases for this type of tool, and then also like listening to other people, especially in the product management space, talk about it. And what I keep hearing over and over again is, um, AIs are not necessarily that like emotionally intelligent. They aren't going to replace a lot of the like human to human interactions that we need to have to work as a team, to work effectively together, to be leaders, and those types of things. So like the soft skills,
Okay.
more or less. So and it's not to say that AI won't do that or that it's bad at that, but it's not what it's best at. What it's best at is, uh, in summary, I would really say is actually like translating data. Like it takes data from one context and translates into another context. So whether that's like
Great.
a language translation or, you know, um, summaries of things or rewriting something to be in a like a more professional format,
Right.
it's taking one set of data and then translating it and putting it in another format. Even text-based to audio-based exists, or vice versa. So that's actually what AI is really good at. And I was
Right.
just talking to a friend of mine yesterday who went to Michigan, and he was working on like research on one of the first versions of um, the transformer model, which I didn't really understand, but it's the transformer model that is the T in GPT. And it's like, essentially like that breakthrough of the technology that allowed this like translation thing to happen, like that revolutionized the way the technology was doing that. That's the first use case of it. So that's actually in the long run, that's what it's going to be best at.
Right.
And so uh then there's what it's best at, and then there's what it's not as good at. And so those are the things from a career standpoint, those are the things that are going to become more important in the human skill set. So it's the ability to collaborate with people. It's the ability to not just get the right answer, but to ask the right question.
Yes, that's pretty
That's like a
important.
huge one. And like in product management, you see that it's not necessarily about being the best at building, but it's the best at discovering. So understanding the user, understanding the challenges they're having, listening well, empathizing with them, seeing the connection between the challenges they're having and possible solutions, right? And then leveraging AI and of course engineers and designers and stuff to then build it, but the resources needed for the building phase are much less now because of how AI can be leveraged.
For sure.
So then again, those discovery tools, listening, understanding, defining the problem, and so on, those become way more important. And also assessing the effectiveness of like then what is built, assessing that. Yeah, it's again, it's not about analyzing data, but it's about choosing the right data to look at.
Which is, I would say, very important.
Yeah, exactly. So those like you can sort of see what becomes more important in terms of your career based on what these new technologies are now able to do very well. So whatever they aren't able to do well is now going to become more important in your career skill set. And I'll just say too that like, before AI, then there was like the internet, and before the internet, there was digital technology and so on and so forth. And after AI, there's going to be other innovations. I'm certain of that. And so like it's not just AI, it's just the pattern of thinking. Okay,
Right.
look at that new technology and how does it work? Understand it. What is it good for? What is it really good at? And then what are its blind spots essentially?
Right.
And then that's what I'm going to need more in to be effective, at working with people and to bring value. Yeah.
100%. 100%.
So that really addresses like what I would say like AI proofing your career. That's
Yeah.
what people are
In a
looking.
nutshell, I guess.
And then there's this aspect of the ethics as well. And I think they go in parallel because it's like we could, and many people will do this, they'll just say, oh, well, AI can do it, so I'll just let AI do it. And they sort of give up a certain level of power when they do that. And that could be okay if that AI that they're using is entirely ethically designed. But if that AI isn't ethically designed, then they would be giving up their power to some way of solving the problem that is somehow unethical.
Right.
And they probably wouldn't know that too.
Which is even, I would say, more
That's
of
sort
a,
of the tricky part.
yeah.
Yeah. And then, I don't think we're going to have time to go into the whole like what is actually ethical and what is not ethical.
That's probably a discussion that would last a very, very long time.
But just one really simple way to look at that, actually, Buddhism has a very strong view on how to understand ethics. And it's essentially like what leads to uh, uh, further development of the mind, of the typically the human mind, but it could just be the mind of anything. What leads to further development, and development meaning less uh, less kind of a lot of the stuff that I've talked about, less identifying with certain patterns, certain views, like being stuck in high achieving, less reactivity, less conflict that doesn't get addressed or observed. So in Buddhism, ethics is essentially all of that, which is like not about good and bad, but it's more about what actually helps us continue to evolve and what contributes to a healthy evolutionary process for all of us. So
Totally.
I'll just put that on the table as just like a very interesting way of looking at ethics.
Something to ponder.
Yeah. And so then you could say with that, you could say, how can AI help us evolve?
Right.
And not just like improve our DNA, but I mean like psychologically and spiritually and culturally, and how can it help us bring our mind and our society and our capacities to the next like stage of what humans can do, what we can do together on this planet.
Which is the big question.
Yeah,
Think.
yeah.
So that's probably the best approach I've heard so far as to like where do we go from here and why does it matter? So totally agree with you on all of that on all fronts.
Yeah.
And then I guess we briefly spoke about this in our own time, but I think it's quite relevant and really important in the grander scheme of things. But people in college, I guess myself included, we kind of deal with the idea of, facing a different kind of uncertainty, not really sure what's going to happen next. So I guess I can speak for myself, but I guess I can also speak for a lot of other people. Um, when I say like, I think we all think of like, what are we doing with our lives? Um, is tech still worth entering? I mean, sometimes it seems like our efforts are futile, right? Like, and you even mentioned earlier, like everything is a cycle, like eventually like this will all collapse and regenerate and become something else. And so like kind of what is the point, right? Like a lot of people I think kind of have that sort of existential sort of thought process.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I guess like what are we gonna do? Like what like in college it's like everything's up in the air, especially now with, everyone's saying like I don't know where AI is going. There might be a total AI takeover. Like there's a lot of uncertainty in the air. And so I guess what, as someone who's been in college, someone who's worked with people who have gone through, stressful times in their lives and faced uncertainty, and I'm sure you faced a lot of uncertainty yourself as, someone living on this planet. What is sort of your recommendation or perspective or outlook on what someone in college could do?
Yeah. It's such a
Big
great question.
question. Big
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna start with a very maybe interesting answer, which is just that obviously everyone has a unique situation. And so I'll just put this out there that if anyone does want to reach out to me and have a conversation, assuming that I don't get like hundreds of requests, I which would be okay. But if you are hearing this and you do want to just have someone genuinely listen to you and your situation, I will raise my hand to do that. There's also other people out there who are offering to do this kind of thing, whether it's like one of your teachers or a mentor in your life, or you know, your uncle or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe a family member who just wants to hold space for you and is wishing the best for you. But yeah, like really just that's actually like a great suggestion, is like just find someone who can listen to you and not try to give you advice, not try to fix you, not try to solve the problem, but just hold space for you so that you can talk about what you're going through and what you're thinking about. Um, that's going to be probably the best solution for like for really anyone who's listening here.
Yeah.
Uh,
Totally.
and then if you want like a little more of a structure and a technical solution to this kind of thing, then the main thing is uh, that I would say is, well, this is going to sound a little intense maybe for some people, but you are going to die. You are going to die, and that is okay. We're all going to die.
Yeah.
And so you want to make sure that you take care of all the things that you need to do before you die.
Right.
So if there are certain things that you need to do that you really, really feel that you need to do in your life before you die, then make sure that you do them. Like prioritize those things, number one. So I had this big reflection myself when I was on my trip going to Thailand, and I realized I need to spend more time with my parents. I need to meet them as people, not just my parents. I need to understand who they are and connect with them. And so immediately after my trip in Thailand, I came home and I spent time with them. And it was the most important thing for me to do. And so I did it. And then what happened after that was that the rest of my whole entire life, I've become free. And I can just say, this is now a free life. And it's like, I just keep getting like a new life card every breath. And it's like, here you go, like free life, like do what you need to do, do what you want to do what's most important, do what you best you can do with your life. And like, it's just the most amazing experience because I don't have any debt. I don't have any like spiritual debt to pay off right now. So I can
Right.
just be in this place of giving and being most of service to everyone and everything.
Right. Because I guess when you're most free, you kind of it it reflects in the community that you're in, and it kind of has a positive effect on not just yourself, but I guess something for me is I've realized, and I talked to my dad extensively about this sort of thing. We get very philosophical and whatnot. I think you'd actually hit it off with my dad. You guys should maybe have
Nice.
a chat at some point, but I've kind of come to this realization, like what we do affects not just ourselves, not just our little circle, but it affects everybody because we are all so interconnected, as people living on this earth, as people who just we coexist, and we're, no matter what your political or your philosophical or your religious sort of ideas are. I think that understanding that what we do to one another affects ourselves. So if you do something to hurt someone else, you're inherently also hurting yourself. Like causing detriment is just going to cause detriment to everyone in the space. And understanding that if you uplift someone, you're uplifting yourself. Because we are all so deeply interconnected. And so I guess when you realize, like for you, it was like, I don't want to have to owe anything to not just like other people, but like to myself. I don't want to feel like I'm, you know, indebted to myself by,
I don't want to have any regrets on my deathbed.
right, by not prioritizing the things that matter to me and the things that are
Yeah.
important to me. It's
Yeah.
very freeing for you, you've said, and also I'm sure it kind of reflects in your other parts of your life, and I'm sure, other people are able to feel that change and just interacting
Mhm.
with you, and so again, it's like the chain reaction idea, right? One good decision you make affects other decisions down the line in myriad ways. And so, yeah, I think that what you're doing is really sort of good for you and good for everybody. And I like
Mm.
the
Wow.
sort of, analogy of here's a free card, here's a free card for another breath, another breath. So uh
Yeah.
that's something I'm gonna think about and hold on to. Wow.
I'll
Well,
just share two more things that are the one is that just to build on what you're saying, I had a meditation teacher who said, here's a very practical definition of karma. Like, we think of karma and it's like, oh yeah, karma's a bitch, and like, that happened to you because of your karma. So
right.
very simple view is when you do something positive, like you help somebody, you train your mind and body to operate in that mode of doing something positive. And so then that pattern lives with you into whatever other experiences you live in your life. If you do something negative, like you judge someone, you create a conflict, you react, etc., that practices a negative pattern, and then that is wired in your system, and it will play out again at some point in the future.
Right.
And so it's just exactly what you're saying. It's like practice the positive, ethical. Again, I could use the word ethical, like practice the ethical behavior, the one that is honest and true and compassionate and wise. And that is going to help you create more experiences like that in the future for yourself and those around you. And it's going to
Totally.
lead to this evolutionary experience
Totally.
of us as humans.
Totally.
And the other thing I wanted to say, I meant to say this earlier, but it was with, what should people do with their lives? And we're going to give like a really vanilla answer, which is like, figure out what your goals are and achieve them.
Mm.
And just as you're doing that, just double check though, if those goals are your goals or if they're your parents' goals or if they're society goals.
Or somebody else's.
So just try to create a distinction or discernment between what are really my goals, what
Right.
is most important to me, and then go and achieve them. And even if you're not sure, just try to achieve them, because that process of executing and trying, that is going to clarify if that is actually your goal or not.
Right.
And then maybe
Exactly.
you achieve it, like, I won a world championship in ultimate frisbee. Cool. But then I was like, okay, that didn't actually really, like, it didn't actually mean that much to me, the winning part. It was all the experiences that led up to it, and afterwards the connections it created, and the lessons I learned and everything. That was what was really valuable out of it. So then it helped me realize, oh, I don't need to chase an achievement like that. I need to chase those kinds of experiences, the learning and the connections and the teammates, and um,
Mm.
yeah, excelling at something. That's what brought me to life. So, but I could have only figured that out by going for my goal,
Mm.
going to try to achieve that. So
Trial and error.
yeah, and trial
But,
and reflection.
and reflection. It's a better way to put it. I like it. And I guess maybe just one last thing here. Is there anything that you could recommend to people who are in college, or, just young adults in general, or I guess maybe anybody, um, people who are feeling sort of stuck or cynical or whatever it may be, overwhelmed? Is there anything that you would recommend to, maybe just like one thing that you could recommend to maybe have a mindset shift, like one practice, one book, one whatever it
Mhm.
is,
Yeah.
one thing that you think could, and I know we said each person is different and you tailor your experiences and whatnot accordingly, your advice, but maybe just something that can generally be applied.
Yeah, well, I think the advice that resonates most for me in with this kind of question is, yeah, if you're stuck or cynical or um feeling like, it's like an existential crisis and you don't know what to do, it just like, I just want you to know that that's okay.
Mm.
That's my advice. It's like, I just want you to know that that's okay. It's okay to
Right.
be having that experience. And it's actually totally normal, and it's probably a really good thing to be questioning all of that stuff and to be unsure, and to, if you're feeling like you're like there's a lack of purpose or a lack of meaning, then listen to that.
Mm.
And
Self-awareness again.
yeah, and not to be afraid of it or to empower it necessarily, but just to acknowledge, oh yeah, that's happening for me.
Totally.
And then, okay, well, right, that is happening for me. And then wait, okay, well, maybe maybe there's something important about that. Like maybe it's important that this job I'm in is like feels like it lacks meaning. Like maybe it actually lacks meaning. Like
Yeah.
revolutionary. Like maybe that's
Right.
actually true.
Right.
And then, of course there's like the downstream of that. Well, okay, maybe I should change jobs and etc. But the first part of that whole process, without trying to figure everything out, is just really acknowledge that experience that you're having
Totally.
and just know, like, I'm just telling you it's okay. Like for you and for whoever's listening to this, just like,
Mhm.
just know, like, I'm telling you it's okay. And you don't have to believe me, but if you do and that is helpful, then that's my advice.
Perfect. Well, thank you for the advice and for everything else that you've shared today. I know we covered a lot of different topics, and I kind of got some free coaching out of you on the
Ah,
spot.
yeah, that's
So
fun.
feel free to send me the bill for that later. But
Nice.
thank you for your time and for your insights and it's I think you have a very refreshing perspective on everything, especially, we get really caught up in all the technical stuff and AI, and we have to produce. So it's nice to hear that some people are actually trying to, take a step back and have a larger worldview and understand the implications of everything we do, and how important it is to be in touch and in tune with ourselves, and how that kind of corresponds with the rest of the world, and what that means for us going forward in the future. So
That
thank
I
you
just
very
want to
much.
say that just summarized my whole point about how to AI proof your career, which is like, just look at what that whole approach is doing and then see what it's not doing. And it's everything that you just described.
Yeah.
It's slowing down, doing nothing instead of building all the time. Just do nothing. Just
Right.
look, listen, be present, you know,
Totally.
be self-aware. Like those are all things that AI and the whole AI movement are not doing.
Yeah.
And so if you do those and you become good at doing those things, those become your superpower, and then you become indispensable in some way in, whatever future we exist in.
Regaining control
Yeah. So
of your,
yeah,
yeah, totally. Well, thank you
great
so much.
reflection.
I'll keep all of these things in mind. Definitely. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on and talking to me about all of this.
Yeah. It's been really fun. I appreciate your questions and your listening too.
Of course. I think that's something some people have maybe forgotten how to do, is just kind of listen. Um, I think we learn a lot when we, turn our eardrums on and just kind of, not just like, people always say like you can hear things but you don't always listen, but actually listening is very proactive. And so uh
Mhm.
yeah, sometimes even I forget how to do that. So it's always good to, ground and recenter myself and engage in these conversations and remind myself, well, why I'm here and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sam, and thanks everyone for listening. And I guess I'll link all of your sort of platforms and whatnot to
Mhm.
the podcast in case you meant what you said. And if anyone wants to reach out,
Yeah,
send
for
you a
sure.
message, they can.
Yeah, and I mean the best right now is LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, and so you can just
Totally.
add me as a connection and send me a DM if you want to reach out. That's going to be the easiest way to get in touch with me.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure that gets done. Thanks again.
All right, thanks so much.
Hi, this was Aadi Weber, your host from the Paradigm Podcast. We currently publish our episodes on YouTube and Spotify. If you enjoyed our conversation, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you all for listening. See you next time.